The crystal towers of Zephyria gleamed under the pale blue sun, casting rainbow shadows across the sacred breeding grounds. Inside the largest tower, Keeper Vela looked down at her newborn litter with growing disappointment. 4 pups lay sleeping in the soft nest, but only 3 would bring honor to her family name. The first 3 pups were perfect. Their fur shone like polished obsidian, and even in sleep, faint waves of psychic energy rippled around them. These would become mighty warriors or wise counselors, adding strength to the Kithrin Empire. But the 4th pup made Vela's heart sink. He was smaller than his brothers, with strange silver-gray fur that seemed to shimmer oddly in the light. His ears were too large for his head, and worst of all, the psychic sensors showed nothing. No mental energy, no telepathic potential, no value at all. The breeding council would label him defective within hours. Keeper Vela, came a cold voice from the doorway. High Examiner Chorus entered, his black robes rustling against the crystal floor. Behind him walked 2 junior examiners, their faces already showing disgust as they looked at the small pup. "We have come for the testing," Chorus announced. He moved each pup, placing a glowing crystal near their heads. The first 3 pups caused the crystals to pulse with bright light, measuring their psychic strength. When he reached the 4th pup, the crystal remained dark. As expected, Chorus said with a sneer, "This one is worthless. It carries no gift, no strength, no purpose. You know what must be done." Vela's claws flexed against the stone floor. She had hoped somehow that her smallest pup might show hidden talents. But Kithrin law was clear. Defective offspring brought shame to their families and weakness to the species. They could not be allowed to remain. "Take him to the waste grounds beyond the city," Chorus commanded. "Let nature decide his fate. If he survives, perhaps he can serve as a scavenger. If not, then he was never meant to live." The junior examiners wrapped the sleeping pup in rough cloth and carried him away. Vela watched them go, fighting the urge to call out. Motherly love was considered a weakness among her people. The strong survived, and the weak were cast aside. This was their way. Hours later, the small pup woke up alone on the rocky ground outside the city walls. The cloth had been torn away by the wind, and sharp stones cut into his soft paws. He cried out, a high-pitched whine that echoed across the empty landscape. No answer came. For 3 days, the pup survived on puddles of rainwater and scraps of rotting vegetation. Larger creatures prowled the waste grounds at night, and he learned to hide in small crevices between rocks. His oversized ears, which had marked him as defective, now helped him hear approaching danger. On the 4th day, exhaustion finally overcame him. He collapsed near a twisted metal structure that had fallen from the sky long ago. As consciousness faded, he heard strange sounds in the distance, loud voices speaking in an alien tongue and the whine of unfamiliar machines. Jake Morrison wiped sweat from his forehead as he examined the crashed ship's hull. The metal was worth good money, but getting it out of this rocky maze would be a challenge. His salvage crew had been working these outer rim worlds for months, collecting valuable materials from old battlefields and crashed vessels. "Hey, Jake," called out Lisa Chun from behind a pile of debris. "You need to see this." Jake walked over to where his crewmate was kneeling. In the shadow of a broken engine part lay a small, furry creature. It was barely breathing, its silver fur matted with dirt and blood. "What is it?" Jake asked, crouching down for a closer look. "Some kind of alien pup, I think," Lisa replied. "Looks like it's been out here for days. Poor thing is half dead." Jake had seen plenty of alien creatures in his travels, but something about this one made him pause. The pup's large ears twitched slightly, and one eye opened to look at him. There was intelligence there, and something else. Fear, but also hope. "We should leave it," said Pete Williams, another crew member who had walked over. "Alien animals can carry diseases. Not worth the risk." But Jake was already lifting the small creature carefully in his hands. The pup was lighter than he expected, and its breathing was shallow. "We'll take it back to the ship," he decided. "Sam can check it out." Lisa smiled. She had always liked Jake's softer side, even though he tried to hide it behind his tough exterior. "The others won't be happy about bringing an alien aboard. They'll deal with it," Jake said, cradling the pup against his chest. As they walked back toward their ship, he felt the small creature relax slightly in his arms. Neither of them knew that this moment would change the course of galactic history. Dr. Sam Rodriguez looked up from his medical scanner as Jake entered the ship's small medical bay. The alien pup lay unconscious on the examination table, its silver fur now clean and shining under the bright lights. Wires connected to small sensors tracked its vital signs on the nearby monitor. "Well, what's the verdict?" Jake asked, crossing his arms. He had been pacing the corridors for the past hour, while Sam worked. "This little guy is tougher than he looks," Sam replied, pointing to the scan results on his tablet. "He's had some injuries, but nothing too serious. Cuts and bruises mostly, plus dehydration. What's really interesting is his biology." Jake moved closer to look at the sleeping creature. Up close, he could see that the pup's fur had an almost metallic quality, and his breathing was stronger than it had been in the wasteland. "See these readings?" Sam continued, showing Jake the scanner display. "He's got backup organs for almost everything. 2 hearts, 3 kidneys, and his liver can process toxins that would kill most species. This isn't a weak creature at all. Then why was he abandoned?" Jake wondered aloud. Before Sam could answer, the pup's eyes opened, large amber-colored eyes that seemed to take in everything around them. The creature didn't panic or try to escape. Instead, it looked directly at Jake and made a soft chirping sound. "I think he remembers you," Sam said with a smile. Jake reached out slowly and touched the pup's head. The fur was incredibly soft, and the creature leaned into his touch. "What do you think he eats?" "I ran some tests on his digestive system," Sam explained. "He can eat almost anything organic. Fruits, vegetables, meat, even some processed foods. Very adaptable." Over the next few days, the pup recovered quickly. Jake found himself spending more and more time in the medical bay, bringing food and just sitting with the creature. The pup seemed to understand that Jake had saved him, and he rarely left the human side when allowed to roam the ship. Lisa Chin was the first to notice something unusual. "Jake, I swear that pup understands what we're saying," she told him one evening as they watched the creature play with a small metal toy. "Come on, Lisa. He's smart, but he's still just an animal." "Watch this," she said, then looked at the pup. "Can you bring me that wrench over there?" The pup tilted his head, looked at the wrench across the room, then walked over and picked it up in his mouth. He brought it back to Lisa and dropped it at her feet. Jake stared in amazement. That could just be training like a dog. "Jake," Lisa said seriously, "dogs don't understand the difference between a wrench and a screwdriver. Show him, little guy." The pup looked around the room, then walked to the toolkit. He sniffed at several tools before selecting a screwdriver and bringing it back. "Okay, that's definitely not normal," Jake admitted. 2 weeks later, Jake made the decision to return the pup to his home world. Despite growing attached to the creature, he felt it was the right thing to do. The Wanderer set course for Zephyria, and Jake tried to ignore the sad look in the pup's amber eyes. When they arrived at the Kithrin capital, Jake was shocked by the response. The Port Authority officials looked at the pup with disgust and refused to take him back. "This creature is genetically defective," explained Commander Thale, a tall Kithrin with sleek black fur and cold eyes. "It was properly disposed of according to our laws. Why did you bring it back?" "Disposed of?" Jake's voice rose with anger. "You mean abandoned to die?" "It serves no purpose," Thale replied coldly. "It cannot contribute to our society. It has no psychic abilities, no strength, no value. You humans should eliminate it as well." Jake felt his temper flare. "Eliminate it? This pup is more intelligent than half the creatures I've met in the galaxy. Intelligence without psychic power is meaningless," Thale said with a dismissive wave. "Take it away. Do not bring it back here again." As they left the Kithrin station, Jake looked down at the pup sitting beside him on the bridge. The creature seemed to understand what had happened, and he pressed closer to Jake's leg. "Well, little guy," Jake said, scratching behind the pup's large ears, "looks like you're stuck with us." The pup looked up at him, and for the first time, Jake could have sworn he saw the creature smile. Lisa Chin watched the exchange with interest. "So, what are we going to call him?" Jake thought for a moment. "How about Nyx? It means night, and that silver fur looks like starlight. As if responding to his name, Nix chirped softly and wagged his tail. From that moment on, he was part of the crew. That night, as Jake lay in his bunk, he felt Nix curl up beside him. The warmth and steady breathing of his new companion was oddly comforting. Jake had saved many things in his career as a salvage operator, but this was the first time he felt like he had saved something truly special. Neither of them knew that their bond would soon prove to be more powerful than anything the galaxy had ever seen. 3 months had passed since Nix joined the crew of the Wanderer. The small alien had grown larger and stronger, though he was still smaller than a species normally reached. His silver fur now gleamed with health, and his amber eyes seemed to take in everything around him with keen intelligence. Jake had never owned a pet before, but Nix was clearly more than that. The creature followed him everywhere, learning the routines of salvage work, and even helping with simple tasks. He could sort scrap metal by type and quality, something that should have been impossible for an animal to understand. "Jake, you need to see this," Lisa called out one morning as the crew prepared for another salvage run. She was standing near the ship's control panel, looking puzzled. Jake walked over to find Nix sitting in front of the navigation screen, his large ears pointed forward in concentration. The screen showed their current location and several nearby salvage sites marked in different colors. "He's been staring at this for 10 minutes, Lisa explained. "And look at this." She pointed to one of the marked locations. "Every time I highlight this site, he makes that worried sound and shakes his head. But when I select this other one, he wags his tail." Jake frowned. The site Nix seemed to approve was farther away and showed lower metal readings on their sensors. "That doesn't make sense. The closer site has much better salvage potential." "Maybe we should trust him," Sam suggested, joining the conversation. "He hasn't been wrong about anything yet." Against his better judgment, Jake decided to follow Nix's advice. They set course for the distant site, a decision that probably saved their lives. When they arrived, they found the wreckage of a massive cargo hauler filled with rare metals and intact technology. "How did you know?" Jake asked Nix, who simply chirped and rubbed against his leg. 2 days later, while exploring the cargo ship's remains, Nix suddenly became agitated. He ran back and forth between Jake and the exit, making urgent whining sounds that the crew had never heard before. "What's wrong with him?" Pete Williams asked, watching Nix's frantic behavior. "I don't know, but he's trying to tell us something," Jake replied. He had learned to pay attention when Nix acted strangely. The urgency in Nix's voice grew stronger. He grabbed Jake's pant leg with his teeth and pulled toward the exit. Finally, Jake decided to trust his companion's instincts. "Everyone out now," Jake ordered. The crew evacuated the cargo ship just as a massive explosion rocked the vessel. The blast would have killed anyone still inside. As they watched pieces of debris rain down around their ship, Jake looked at Nix with amazement. "How did you know that was going to happen?" Sam ran a quick scan of the wreckage. The cargo ship's reactor was unstable. It must have been building toward that explosion for hours. But there's no way to know that without specialized equipment. "Unless you can sense energy patterns that our instruments can't detect," Lisa said thoughtfully, looking at Nix. Over the following weeks, Nix's abilities became even more apparent. He could predict equipment failures before they happened, find hidden compartments in salvage ships, and even sense when other vessels were approaching long before they appeared on radar. But the most surprising development came during a quiet evening in the ship's common area. The crew was playing cards when Nix walked over and sat beside Jake's chair. He looked at the cards in Jake's hand, then at the cards face down on the table. "Your turn, Jake," Lisa said. Jake was about to make his play when Nix softly touched his wrist with one paw. The creature looked up at him with those intelligent amber eyes and made a different sound than usual. Not a chirp or a whine, but something that almost sounded like, "No," Nix said clearly. The entire crew froze. Cards scattered to the floor as everyone stared at the alien pup. "Did he just—" Sam started. "Talk." Jake finished. "Yeah, I think he did." Nix looked around at all the surprised faces, then tried again. "Jake, good. Car, bad." Jake looked at his hand. He had been about to play a card that would have lost him the game. Instead, He chose a different one and won the round. "Nix," Jake said slowly. "Can you understand us?" The pup nodded his head up and down, copying the human gesture he had observed countless times. "Yes, understand. Learning words." Lisa laughed with delight. "He's been listening to us all this time, picking up our language. How long have you been able to speak?" Jake asked. Nix tilted his head thoughtfully. "Days, many days. Scared to try. You might send away." Jake's heart ached at the fear in Nix's voice. He knelt down and gently stroked the creature's head. "Nix, you're family now. We would never send you away." The relief in Nix's eyes was unmistakable. "Family," he repeated, as if testing the word. "Good word. Jake is pack leader?" "Something like that." Jake smiled. From that day forward, Nix became even more integrated into the crew. His vocabulary grew rapidly, and his ability to predict danger saved them multiple times. But Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they had only seen the beginning of what his unusual companion could do. Late at night, when the ship was quiet, Jake often found Nix staring at the control panels with intense concentration. The creature seemed to be studying something that only he could see or sense. Whatever it was, Jake had the feeling it would change everything. The attack came without warning. Jake was reviewing salvage reports in his quarters when alarms started blaring throughout the Wanderer. Red lights flashed as the ship's automated voice announced an emergency. "All crew to battle stations. Hostile vessels approaching. All crew to battle stations." Jake rushed to the bridge where Lisa was already working controls. On the main screen, 3 pirate ships were closing in fast, their weapons charging for an attack. "Where'd they come from?" Jake demanded, sliding into the captain's chair. "They must have been hiding behind that asteroid field," Lisa replied, her fingers flying over the navigation controls. "They're jamming our communications. We can't call for help." The Wanderer was a salvage ship, not a warship. It had basic shields and only light weapons for protection. Against 3 pirate vessels, they didn't stand a chance in a fair fight. "Can we outrun them?" Sam asked as he entered the bridge. "Not a chance." Pete answered from the weapons station. "They're faster," and they got surrounded. Nix had been sleeping in Jake's quarters when the alarm started. Now he bounded onto the bridge, his silver fur standing on end and his ears flat against his head. He looked at the screen showing the approaching pirates, then at Jake with worried eyes. "Danger," Nix said simply. "Bad ships. Very bad." The first pirate ship opened fire. Energy beams struck the Wanderer's shields, causing the entire ship to shake. Warning lights flashed as the shield strength dropped by 30%. "We can't take many more hits like that," Lisa reported. Jake gripped the arms of his chair, thinking desperately. They were outgunned, outnumbered, and trapped. There had to be something they could do. Nick suddenly stood up straight, his ears pointing forward. He walked to the main control console and placed his paws on it. "Jake, trust Nix?" "What are you going to do?" Jake asked. "Stop bad ships, but need Jake to trust. Please." Jake looked into Nix's amber eyes and saw determination there, along with something else. Confidence. "Do it." Nix closed his eyes and pressed his paws more firmly against the console. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ship's lights dimmed as power was redirected to systems Jake didn't even know they had. The weapons console lit up with new displays. Pete stared in amazement as targeting systems he had never seen before came online. "Jake, I'm reading weapon systems that aren't supposed to exist on this ship." "Fire," Nick said quietly, his eyes still closed. Pete pressed the firing button. Instead of the usual light energy beams, the Wanderer shot out precisely targeted pulses that struck each pirate ship's engine section. The pirate ship stopped dead in space, their engines disabled but their crews unharmed. "How did you do that?" Lisa asked in wonder, but Nix wasn't finished. The ship's navigation system came alive under his touch, showing flight paths and possible moves that no computer should have been able to calculate so quickly. "Move ship now," Nix instructed. Jake took the controls and followed the course Nix somehow projected into his mind. The Wanderer moved through space with impossible precision, avoiding the pirates' desperate return fire and positioning itself perfectly to disable their weapon systems with surgical strikes. Within minutes, all 3 pirate ships were floating helplessly in space, their crews alive but their ships completely disabled. "This is Captain Helen Foster of the patrol ship Aurora," came a voice over the communication system. "We received your distress signal and are moving to assist." Jake looked at Lisa in confusion. "We never sent a distress signal. Our communications were jammed." Nix opened his eyes and removed his paws from the console. The extra weapon systems disappeared from the displays, and the ship's power returned to normal. Nix sent signal. Different way? Captain Foster's ship arrived within an hour. She was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see everything. After making sure the pirates were properly contained, she came aboard the Wanderer. "I need to speak with whoever disabled those ships," she said. "That kind of precision targeting is beyond anything I've seen." Jake hesitated, then gestured to Nix, who was sitting quietly beside his chair. It was him. Captain Foster looked at the alien pup with surprise, then understanding. "Ah, another one." "Another one?" Jake repeated. "We've been getting reports," Foster explained. "Humans across the galaxy have been finding creatures like this one, all supposedly defective, according to their birth species, all showing abilities that seem impossible." She knelt down to look at Nix more closely. "What you just did, connecting directly with your ship systems and calculating those attack patterns, that's not normal psychic ability. That's something entirely different." Nix looked back at her calmly. "Nix not broken. Nix different." "Yes, you are," Foster agreed. "And I think your difference is going to change everything." She stood up and faced Jake. "You need to know that word is spreading about pairs like you too. Some species see it as a threat. Others see it as an opportunity. Either way, your quiet salvage days are probably over." Jake looked down at Nix, who met his gaze with those intelligent amber eyes. "We'll face whatever comes together." "Family," Nix added with what Jake had learned to recognize as his version of a smile. Captain Foster smiled too. "I think the galaxy is about to become a very interesting place." News of the pirate encounter spread quickly through human space. Within days, Jake found his communication system flooded with messages from scientists, government officials, and other humans who claimed to have similar alien companions. Dr. Maya Thompson was the first scientist to reach them. She arrived at the space station where Jake had docked for repairs, carrying a bag full of scanning equipment and a notebook filled with questions. "Mr. Morrison," she said as she boarded the Wanderer, "I've been studying reports of human-alien bonding for months. Your case with Nix might be the key to understanding what's really happening." Maya was a small woman with bright eyes and an excited way of speaking that reminded Jake of a child with a new toy. She immediately began setting up her equipment, while asking rapid-fire questions. "How long have you had Nix? When did his abilities first manifest? Has he shown any signs of technological integration beyond what we witnessed in the pirate encounter?" Nix watched the scientist with curious eyes, but stayed close to Jake. He had become more protective since the attack, rarely leaving Jake's side when strangers were around. "Dr. Thompson," Jake said, "before we start any tests, I need to know what you've discovered about other cases like ours." Maya paused her equipment setup and pulled out a tablet. "There are at least 50 confirmed cases across human space. Humans who have adopted rejected aliens from various species. In every case, the alien was considered defective or worthless by their birth species." She showed Jake images of different alien creatures alongside their human companions. There was a young girl named Katie Bell, with a floating jellyfish-like creature that could control atmospheric conditions. A man named Tony Clark had bonded with a rock-like being that could manipulate gravity. Each pair seemed to complement each other perfectly. "The most interesting case," Maya continued, involved a retired engineer named Carol White. She found a small reptilian creature that had been abandoned by the Saurian Empire. Together, they've been able to design spacecraft engines that are 40% more efficient than anything we've built before. Nix's ears perked up with interest. "Others like Nix?" he asked. "Many others," Maya confirmed. and each one shows abilities that their birth species completely missed. She turned to Jake with excitement. What we're seeing isn't random. These creatures aren't effective at all. They represent evolutionary adaptations that their species don't recognize or value. Maya spent the next week running tests on Nyx with Jake's permission. Her findings were remarkable. Nyx's brain showed neural pathways that could interface directly with electronic systems. His unusual organ structure allowed him to process information at incredible speeds. Most importantly, his bond with Jake seemed to enhance both their abilities. Jake, Maya explained one evening as they reviewed her data, when Nyx connects with technology, he's not just controlling it. He's creating a bridge between organic and artificial intelligence. And somehow, your presence makes that bridge stronger. Jake looked at Nyx, who was curled up beside him on the couch. I don't understand. I'm just a salvage operator. I don't have any special abilities. That's where you're wrong, Maya said. Humans have something that most alien species lack. We adapt. We form bonds across species barriers. We see potential where others see failure. Nyx needed someone who could accept him as he is, not as his species thought he should be. As Maya's research continued, more human-alien pairs began arriving at the station. Word had spread that this was where the first successful bonding had been studied. Jake found himself at the center of something much larger than he had ever imagined. Captain Foster visited again, this time with troubling news. The Kithran government is demanding that all humans return their stolen property, she reported. They claim that taking their discarded offspring is theft. Theft! Jake's anger flared. They threw these creatures away to die. I know that, and you know that, Foster replied. But they're building a coalition of species who feel threatened by what they're seeing. Some aliens are starting to question their own traditions about defective offspring. Nyx looked up from where he had been playing with a small electronic toy. Birth pack afraid, he said quietly. Afraid? Nyx proved him wrong. Maya nodded. He's right. If creatures like Nyx can thrive with human partners, it means the Kithrans have been destroying potentially valuable individuals for generations. That's not something they want to admit. Jake put his hand on Nyx's head, feeling the now familiar warmth of their connection. What do you think we should do? Tell truth, Nyx said simply. Show Galaxy what really possible. Over the following days, Jake watched as more human-alien pairs arrived at the station. Each partnership was unique, but all shared the same pattern. The alien had been rejected by their birth species, found by humans, and developed abilities that amazed everyone who witnessed them. A message arrived from Earth's government requesting that Jake and Nyx travel to the capital to testify before the Galactic Council. The human-alien bonding phenomenon had become too significant to ignore. Are you ready for this? Jake asked Nyx as they prepared to leave for Earth. Nyx looked at him with those intelligent amber eyes, ready to show Galaxy that different not mean broken, ready to help others like Nyx find family. Jake smiled and scratched behind Nyx's ears. Then let's go change the galaxy. As the Wanderer set course for Earth, Jake couldn't help but think about how much his life had changed since that day he found a small, abandoned pup in the wasteland. Now they were heading toward what might be the most important testimony in galactic history. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. The Galactic Council chamber on Earth was the largest building Jake had ever seen. Thousands of seats filled the massive dome, each one occupied by representatives from different alien species. The air hummed with translation devices converting hundreds of languages into sounds each species could understand. Jake sat at a small table in the center of the chamber, with Nyx beside him and Dr. Maya Thompson on his other side. Across from them sat the Kithran delegation, led by High Counselor Theron. The tall alien's black fur gleamed under the bright lights, and his cold eyes showed nothing but contempt. This hearing will address the illegal appropriation of Kithran biological property by human citizens, announced the council speaker, a floating creature surrounded by a blue energy field. High Counselor Theron will present the Kithran position first. Theron rose to his full height, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's sound system. Honored council members, the humans have stolen our discarded offspring and claim ownership of them. These creatures were properly disposed of according to our ancient laws because they lacked the essential qualities of our species. He gestured toward Nyx with obvious disgust. This particular specimen was rejected for good reason. It shows no psychic ability, no strength, no value to Kithran society. Yet the humans paraded around as if it were some great discovery. Murmurs of agreement came from several alien delegations. The Saurian Empire, the Crystalline Collective, and others had all sent representatives to support the Kithran position. We demand immediate return of all stolen Kithran property, Theron continued. If humans wish to keep pets, they should breed their own creatures, not steal ours. The speaker turned to Jake. Mr. Morrison, you may now present the human position. Jake stood up, his legs shaking slightly. He had faced pirates and dangerous salvage operations, but speaking in front of thousands of alien representatives was terrifying. He looked down at Nyx, who gave him an encouraging chirp. Honored Council, Jake began. We didn't steal anything. We rescued dying creatures that had been abandoned to starve. Nyx here was left in a wasteland with no food or water. If that's how the Kithrans treat their own children, then maybe they don't deserve to call them property. Angry sounds came from a Kithran section, but Jake continued. These creatures aren't defective or worthless. They have abilities that their birth species never bothered to discover. Impossible, Theron interrupted. Our testing methods have been perfected over thousands of years. If this creature had any value, we would have detected it. Dr. Maya Thompson stood up. With respect, Counselor, your testing only measures one type of psychic ability. You've been blind to other forms of intelligence. She activated a holographic display, showing brain scans and test results. The creatures you call defective actually represent evolutionary advances. They can interface with technology, predict complex outcomes, and form symbiotic bonds that enhance the abilities of both partners. Lies and human propaganda, Theron snarled. That was when Nyx surprised everyone. The small alien stood up on his hind legs and spoke clearly into the chamber's sound system. Nyx will show truth, he said. Before anyone could stop him, Nyx placed his paws on a control panel built into Jake's table. Instantly, every screen in the chamber lit up with data. Ship schematics, energy readings, communication logs, information that should have been impossible for anyone to access. Chamber security systems now controlled by Nyx. The alien announced calmly, Nyx can open all doors, turn off all lights, or play music if Council prefers. The chamber erupted in chaos. Security guards rushed toward the table, but Nyx simply looked at them and their weapons powered down safely. Nyx not threat, he said. Nyx just proving point. Jake felt a strange sensation, as if information was flowing directly into his mind. Suddenly he understood exactly what Nyx was doing and why. He's not just controlling the technology, Jake announced. He's showing you what's possible when two species work together instead of throwing each other away. The display screens now showed images of all the human-alien pairs across the galaxy. Katie Bell and her atmospheric companion, helping to terraform a dying planet. Tony Clark and his gravity manipulator, preventing an asteroid collision. Carol White and her reptilian partner, revolutionizing space travel. These are your rejects, Jake said, pointing to the screens. The creatures you called worthless. They're out there saving lives, solving problems, and making the galaxy a better place. Nyx released his connection to the chamber systems and sat back down beside Jake. Birth Pack threw away Nyx because Nyx different. But different not mean broken. Different mean new possibilities. High Counselor Theron's face showed a mixture of rage and something else, fear. Even if this display is real, these creatures still belong to us by right of birth. No, came a voice from the gallery. A young Kithran with silver, fur similar to Nyx's, had stood up. Nyx belonged to no one. Nyx choose family. More voices joined in from the audience. Other defective aliens who had been rescued by humans, along with their human partners. The speaker called for order, but the voices continued. The council will recess to consider this testimony, the speaker announced over the noise. As the chamber emptied, Jake looked around at the chaos they had created. Representatives were arguing in dozens of languages, some demanding the return of their property, others questioning their own traditions. Think we got our point across? Jake asked Nix. Point definitely across. Nix replied with his version of a grin. Now real work begins. Outside the chamber, Captain Foster approached him with a grim expression. Jake, I hate to tell you this, but we received report of Kithran military ships moving toward human colonies. They're not waiting for the Council's decision. Jake felt his stomach drop. They're going to try to take the bonded pairs by force. It looks that way, and they're not the only ones. Several species are mobilizing fleets. Nix's ears flattened against his head. War coming because of Nix. Jake knelt down and put his hand on Nix's head. No, buddy, war's coming because some people can't accept that they were wrong. But we're going to stop it. How? Foster asked. Jake looked at Nix, and for a moment, he could swear he felt what his companion was thinking. We're going to show them that the rejects they threw away are stronger than they ever imagined. The first attack came 3 days after the council hearing. Kithran warships surrounded New Eden colony, demanding the immediate surrender of all bonded pairs. When the colonists refused, the ships opened fire on the settlement's shields. Jake and Nix were aboard Captain Foster's ship Aurora when the distress call came through. We have to help them, Jake told Foster as they watched the tactical display, showing 12 human-alien pairs trapped on the colony. My ship can't fight that many Kithran vessels, Foster replied grimly. They have us outgunned 5-1. Nix studied the display with intense concentration. Not need to fight, need to show. Show what? Jake asked. Show what happens when rejects work together. Within hours, pairs from across human space began arriving at New Eden. Katie Bell and her atmospheric companion came first, followed by Tony Clark and his gravity manipulator. Carol White brought her engineering partner, and dozens of others followed. Each ship that arrived was small and lightly armed, but together they represented something the galaxy had never seen before. High Counselor Theron led the Kithran fleet personally. When he saw the gathering human ships, he opened a communication channel to the colony. Surrender now, and we will be merciful. His voice echoed across all frequencies. Continue to resist, and we will take what belongs to us by force. Jake stepped forward to respond. These beings don't belong to you anymore. Theron, they chose their own families. Humans have corrupted our offspring with their weakness. Theron snarled. We will purify them by removing your influence. Then come and try, Jake said quietly. The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. The Kithran ships moved to attack, but they found themselves fighting opponents who could predict their every move. Nix and the other bonded aliens worked together, their abilities amplified by their human partners' creativity and determination. Katie Bell's companion created atmospheric disturbances that confused Kithran sensors. Tony Clark's partner manipulated gravity fields to redirect weapons fire harmlessly into space. Carol White's reptilian friend hacked into the Kithran ship systems and disabled their weapons without harming the crews. But it was Jake and Nix who provided the breakthrough. Working together, they connected to every ship in the human fleet simultaneously, creating a network of shared consciousness that allowed perfect coordination. We don't want to hurt you, Jake broadcast to the Kithran fleet as their ships found themselves gently held in place by invisible forces. We just want you to understand. Through the network Nix had created, Jake shared his memories with every Kithran in the attacking fleet. They saw what it felt like to find a dying creature and nurse it back to health. They experienced the joy of discovery when that creature proved to be more than anyone had imagined. They felt the bond between species that transcended biology and politics. One by one, the Kithran ships stopped their attacks. On the bridge of the flagship, Theron stared at his instruments in disbelief as his own worthless offspring demonstrated abilities that put his greatest warriors to shame. Impossible, he whispered. How could we have been so wrong? Captain Foster's ship moved closer to the Kithran flagship. Because you only saw what you expected to see, she transmitted. You threw away your greatest treasures because they didn't fit your narrow definitions. The standoff lasted for hours, but eventually more ships began arriving. Representatives from species across the galaxy came to witness what was happening at New Eden. They saw humans and aliens working together as equals, their combined abilities creating possibilities that neither species could achieve alone. Dr. Maya Thompson used the gathered attention to present her research to the galaxy. This is evolution in action, she explained to the assembled fleets. Not the survival of the strongest, but the thriving of the most cooperative. 5 years later, Jake stood on the observation deck of Nexus Station, watching ships from dozens of species dock at the massive facility. The station served as headquarters for the Nexus program, a galaxy-wide initiative that helped effective individuals from any species find compatible partners from other worlds. Nix had grown into a magnificent creature, his silver fur now shimmering with patterns that reminded Jake of starlight. He no longer looked like a small, frightened pup, but his amber eyes still held the same warmth and intelligence that had captured Jake's heart years ago. "Busy day," Nix observed, watching a transport ship arrive, carrying refugees from the Crystalline Collective. Their society had recently begun questioning its own traditions about flawed offspring. "The best kind of busy," Jake replied. "How many new pairs do we expect this week?" 47, Nix answered, accessing the station's computers with the ease of long practice, including one very special case. Jake looked at him curiously. "Special how?" Nix's version of a smile spread across his features. "Remember Katie Bell? A little girl who bonded with atmospheric being." "Of course. She's 23 now, working on the Terraform project. She coming today with her own discovery. Small creature called Echo, abandoned by the Sound Weavers. Katie thinks human child might be perfect match." Jake watched through the observation window as a small transport approached. Inside, he knew, was another rejected alien waiting for a chance at a real family. Another opportunity to prove that what one species called worthless might be exactly what another species needed. "Think they'll figure it out?" Jake asked. "Always do," Nix replied confidently. "Love and understanding universal languages. Even when galaxy forgets, families remember." As the transport docked, Jake put his hand on his old friend's head, feeling the familiar warmth of their bond. They had changed the galaxy together, one rescue at a time, and they were just getting started.